Check, quick sound check. Can everybody hear me loud and clear? Happy Sunday, everyone. Let's get a quick sound check. Audio looks good, video looks good. Hopefully, everybody's having a good weekend, good end to your weekend. Welcome to the market kickoff. If you were expecting Nick for a tick, Nick is going to be out for a little while, becoming a dad. So let's all send our prayers for a happy and healthy delivery for Nick's new family member. But I'm going to be taking over for Nick for the next couple of market kickoffs. We may have some guests on, bringing some guests on. I'm not accustomed to doing a show by myself. It's always easier to throw assist sometimes to people. So we may bring on some guests for the next couple of market kickoffs. But I am here tonight. Happy Sunday, everyone. This is our first time meeting. I'm Coach Jay. I've been a Topstep performance coach since June of 2023. Been trading for the past 12 years and in the futures markets for the past 5. And it is nice to meet you all if we have not met already. What we're going to do here, we're going to go over the markets similar to how Nick does, just kind of preparing for the week ahead. We'll talk about some news. The markets will open up about 15 minutes from now. So we may be plotting out some trades. I'll show you guys how I kind of prepare for a trading session and for the week ahead. We'll answer any questions that you have. And if the markets are volatile, we may put on a trade. But let's get into it. Hopefully everybody is prepared for the week, whether there was something that you learned last week to take into your trading here. Maybe you had a good week or a bad week. Let me know in the chat, actually. How was your week last week? Were you up on the week, down on the week? Anything you learned? And we'll go into it from there. Brad says, Coach Jay's VWAP. Yeah, we will be talking about some VWAP today for sure. Do you think the NFL is scripted? I think with the amount of money that's coming into professional sports through sports betting, I wouldn't say that it is scripted, but I wouldn't be surprised either. And that goes for kind of all sports, but it's entertaining. We had a bad week from Rock and TJ. If it was a bad week, try to see what you can learn from it. Definitely up due to crypto. Yeah. So if anyone who's holding any crypto, looks pretty good right now. Bitcoin making new all-time highs. Oh, one more sound check. Let me know if you guys can hear this because we can't do a show without it. Just tested out my air horn. Can't have a market kickoff without an air horn. So let me know if you heard it, if the audio levels were good on it. And yes, we heard it. All right, awesome. Perfect. I think we're going to be using that a lot for this week. We have a bunch of markets making new all-time highs. The NASDAQ, the S&Ps, the Dow, Bitcoin as well, making new all-time highs. Like Dakota says, where do we buy it? And that can be applied to a lot of different markets for this week. I got to turn it up a bit. Let's try it one more time. There we go. Let's see if that one worked. Sean says, other YouTubers speak very highly of you, Jay. Continue to mash the gas. I haven't really paid too much attention to it. I've just been here kind of doing the work. But if you have any examples of that, I'd love to see it. I love to shout out other people who are doing great work in this space also. So Sean, if you have any of that, send it to me in Discord because I'd love to shout them out as well. Horn sounds good. All right. So let's get into these markets. We know I'm looking at the NASDAQ chart right here. Markets don't open up for a couple of minutes. If I'm looking at a daily chart on the NASDAQ, obviously we made new all-time highs. All-time high in the NASDAQ, 21,265 based on this contract, making a high above the previous all-time high, which was made in July, and that was 21,214.50. So first level that I'm going to look at is that 21,214.50. It was the previous all-time high. We'll see how the market responds around there. We do know the last time we made those highs, we sold off pretty strong, right? That started off the the sell-off mid-July into August that we saw, took us back down to this 200 moving average on the daily chart. And markets have been pretty strong since. There's a couple of moving averages that I have on my charts here. The yellow one that you see is the 20 moving average, the purple is the 50, and the white one is the 200 moving average. I started using those moving averages thanks to Coach Paul, who I do At the Buzzer with. And we saw last week, we tested down towards that 20,000 right around on Halloween. I was Frank the Bear for Halloween, looking for a potential test of 20,000. And this is why, right? That 50-day moving average sitting there acting as a support and as a springboard for the markets as well, right? We can see as soon as we hit that 50 moving average on the daily, it's been up ever since. We know we had NFP last week. We had the election results as well, looking very favorable for the markets. So these are not markets that I want to short for a very long time, right? Sometimes it gets hard to trade, markets that are making all-time highs. Where do you buy it? Every time we make a tick up, it is, price discovery. We're making new all-time highs, but that doesn't mean that these are markets that I would want to fight either. Uh, you know, markets can, and for the most part, if they're going to go in one direction, it's usually to the upside for a lot longer, right? We might be seeing the beginning of a rally through the end of the year, into the Santa rally into 2025. So if I'm thinking about how I'm going to trade these markets going into this week, is there potential for a pullback? Maybe. Um, Markets also don't just go straight up or down, and we have gotten pretty extended, I think, without a real pullback at all. There's a couple of 30-minute candles here. I'm on a 30-minute chart now. It's a couple of 30-minute candles that are about 150 points to the downside, but since the beginning of last week, we have not had a real pullback in the markets. Um, and I would not be surprised at one as well. So we have, if you can see my charts here, I don't often use volume profile, but I know Nick does, and I know it's important as well. The way I have this volume profile set up, this is just last week's volume, uh, and the white area is our value area. I have the value area set to 40% on my charts. Normally, as a default, it's set to 70, and the red line is the point of control. So you can see we spent most of the volume for last week at the highs. Um, which is nice to see, right? Building a lot of volume there. But now I'm looking at these areas, 21,220, to see whether or not that becomes supportive or if we open under it, if we potentially get a pullback. Now, I'm on the 30-minute chart and we have the same moving averages, the 20, the 50, and the 200, which is this white one down here. And we've gotten pretty far extended from that 200, and the 20 and the 50 starting to kind of wrap around each other over the past day. Uh, which this tells me that direction has slowed down, right? Obviously this market is in an uptrend, but over the past day and going into the next couple of days, do we continue the rally or do we consolidate for a little bit after making this run? We do have news out this week. We have CPI on Wednesday and PPI jobless claims on Thursday. And if you've traded these markets before, you know that a lot of times when we have heavier data at the end of the week, there's potential for consolidation. Now, anything can and will happen in the markets, and you have to trade what the markets present to you. But with the inflation data coming out later in the week, I wouldn't be surprised at a little bit of a consolidation after making this 1,200 point run in 5 days, and heavier news coming out later in the week. Um, if we look at the value area, the low of this value area is down at 20,870. 20,870, the low of this value area, and then this 200 moving average is at 20,720. Now, what's going to happen as we continue to trade? This 200 moving average is going to continue to, trend up towards the market and get a little bit closer to the market. I wouldn't be surprised at a test of this 200 moving average on the 30-minute chart right around this value area low, which is at 20,865. Some of these levels are going to be levels that I put on the Topstep daily levels webpage. going into tomorrow and for the rest of the week. And if that's not a page that you've seen before, I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. Myself and the other coaches, Coach Ray, Coach Vince, Coach Paul, Coach Jack, Hogue, we're all putting levels on this webpage, as well as the Topstep daily levels that we have on TopstepX. Those get updated probably sometime tomorrow morning, right around 8 o'clock Central Time. But this 20,865 is definitely going to be a level that goes on my daily levels, and potentially for the week. Right now, do we ever hit it? Maybe, maybe not. We may just continue to rally, or like I said, consolidate. The other area that I'm looking at is this 30-minute candle right here, which was the 30-minute open from the New York session on Thursday. Now, why am I looking at that? We had 130-point range on that 30-minute candle. That was the morning after we got the election results, and we can see it from this volume profile. Not a lot of volume traded there, right, in relation to everything else. So I would not be surprised at the market coming back and testing these levels as well. 50% of this is 21,050, we'll call it. Um, what indicators are those? So the indicators I have on the screen right now, just volume profile here. And this is a fixed range volume profile, so I have it set to the entire week. And then I have the moving averages, the 20, 50, and 200 moving average. And John says profit taking coming. So I wouldn't be surprised, right? Now, and that's the difference between a profit taking move and a sell off. Profit taking we can see, right? And the market can sell off. We did run 1,200 points. At some point, you would think, some medium time frame traders are taking profits on this. But the way I look at that for myself is that's a counter trend move. And I can't think about a full retracement of this entire move, right? So I'd want to think, how much room is there for a potential counter trend before we continue? And let's see, if I go back to the daily, we are pretty extended from this 200, the 20 moving average on the daily as well. Maybe 21,000. 21,000 seems like, major psychological level. Anyone who's trading the NASDAQ is going to know when we trade there. So I'd be looking around there. But that's what I have for the NASDAQ, 21,000, 21,050, 20,865, and let's see if I have another level that I'd like to put on here. If this 200 moving average, and wherever this 200 moving average is, right, I'd be watching this on the 30-minute. So those would be my levels for the NASDAQ. Let's go over to the S&P. And I see the questions, thoughts about micro Bitcoin. It's a rally just like the equity markets. Coach Paul and I have been talking about micro Bitcoin a little bit on at the buzzer. He's been trading it for pretty much the entire year. It's a market that started to move like the equity markets, where institutional money is now coming into Bitcoin and pushing it higher as well. You know, we saw the crypto really start to take off after the election results as well, which is kind of telling us, this new president that we have in has some plans for crypto. Looks like those markets like it, and I think we're going to see 100,000 soon. Now, anything we talk about here is for educational purposes only, not trading or investment advice. How we get to 100,000 in Bitcoin, I don't know, but I think it is a real possibility before the end of the year. Real possibility for sure. Let's look at the S&P. The S&P has been the stronger of the equity markets. NASDAQ really just caught up in the last week or so. And we can see the same thing here, right? If I'm on a daily chart, we have that 50 moving average. We tested it early in the week and then rallied up from it. This is just another market making all-time highs. One thing I do want to look at is the ATR, daily ATR. And the market's just opened. And making sure that works. That was for Bitcoin. The daily ATR on the S&Ps is 63, about 64 points. As we're making all-time highs, it's kind of hard to pick levels around here. So what I'm going to look at is kind of do a measure of 65 points from the open, and that would put us at 60,095, right? So 60,095 is going to be the first level I look at up here. That puts us close to that round number of 6,100 as well, which can potentially act like a magnet. Um, but really strong market as well. Same thing here. Could we potentially see a profit-taking move, maybe a retest of 60,000? Or sorry, not 60,000, 6,000. Could we potentially see a retest? Maybe, but not a market that I would want to short for a long time either. So 6,000 is going to be the first level I look at here. We'll be looking at this 200 moving average on the 30-minute as well. But you see the difference between the 20 and the 50 on the ES and in the NASDAQ, right? The 20 and the 50 were kind of braided around each other, where here in the S&Ps, we see the 20 kind of clearly above the 50 and trending higher, showing me that this is still a stronger market for the moment. Think you opened up and shot up 60 points. There you go. We did gap up here. And I'm going to show you guys kind of how I plot out levels. I normally don't take trades during this time. I'm looking at the spread in the NASDAQ right now, and it's about a 5-tick spread. I normally don't trade during this time. If I place any trades overnight, it's usually closer to, Dakota slow markets hours. But this is the time where I start to plot out my trades. So once this half an hour bar closes, you guys, if you've joined at the buzzer, you know exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to attach a VWAP here and just see how that VWAP responds to this first 30-minute range, right? Does it stay in the range? Does it leave the range? Is it giving us an opportunity early to trade? But we just made a new all-time high in the NASDAQ, 21,320 on that open. And I am seeing the NASDAQ. Again, I'm probably not going to trade it. Not right now, at least. I'll be around in the chat while Dakota is doing slow markets. And if it presents an opportunity, I may trade it around there. But really nice gap up, right? Here's I think we'll mark out this gap as well. 21,250 is the low, and 21,233. Sorry, 21,250 is the high. 21,233 is the low, and that's just the gap between last week's close and this week's open, right? So just paying attention to that. See if the market closes that gap at some point. And let's see. I'll go back to the ES real quick. I just want to put a volume profile on the ES as well, just for the last week. Last week's open there, and we'll go to this week's close. We can see the point of control in the S&P is a little bit lower, right? The NASDAQ point of control was pretty much right below that high. Point of control from last week in the S&Ps is at 6,005, which is why I'm kind of looking at this area, this 6,000 whole number for a potential retest. Now, I'd want to see this, retest and hold for continuation to the upside, but I would not be surprised at a retest of that point of control. Right. But it's kind of it on the S&Ps. Let's move over to gold. Anybody been trading gold recently? Has anyone been trading gold recently? Gold made new all-time highs about a week ago and maybe a week and a half ago, and has been pulling off pretty strong from that all-time high. All-time highs in gold 28,001.8. Seeing some downside pressures since then. Over the last week, we've had a sell-off, but again, still pretty strong. Remember what we saw in the S&P and the NASDAQ, kind of testing this 50-day moving average and rallying from there. Now, gold after the election results we got on Thursday did have a little bit of a sell-off. I saw the dollar strength kind of increasing and gold selling off a little bit. Same thing here, though. This is not a market that I want to be short for a long time until it tells me different. Now, this is probably the biggest pullback that we've seen all year. in gold if we're looking at a daily chart. So could we be seeing some profit taking going into the close of the year? If you look at gold, it's been a rally pretty much all of 2024, and at some point, bulls in gold, if they want to see some profits on these trades, need to sell it. Uh, but from a technical perspective, still holding this 50-day moving average. Maybe we get a retest of it here, and that average is at 2666 currently, but not a market that I'm ready to say the rally is over until we start getting some daily closes below this 50-day moving average. We can see how infrequently we test that 50-day moving average. We were below it for a couple of maybe 2 weeks at some point this year, and every other time it acts as a support. So I'm not ready to call the high in gold, and it could be potentially could be. I have to see what the market says, what it's going to tell me, and then go from there. But kind of feels like middle of the range to buy it here. I definitely would want to, if I'm getting long gold, I want to see either the market just push up from this area or another test and rejection below that 50-day moving average. My moving averages are sourced to. I don't know that you can actually change those in TopstepX, but these are just simple moving averages. I don't think you can change them. So, well, at least with this indicator that I'm using, right? I'm using the moving average triple. So I think it is. I think it is the close. I think it is the close as a default. Do you think gold is now going to enter a potential downtrend with this new admin? Potentially, right? I think some of the rally that we've seen in gold is, conversation that we've heard from, the BRICS countries about devaluing the dollar, and maybe sentiment changes depending on, the new admin that we have. So we will see. We will see. Hey, Mohammed, good morning. If you guys haven't seen Mohammed on TopstepTV, I'm sure all of you have. Uh, he's asking for some likes in the chat, and what Mohammed asks for, Mohammed gets. So make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Appreciate you, Mohammed. It's 2 o'clock in the morning over there, but thank you for joining. Good to see you here. Street Runner says gold will drop tremendously. Yeah, I think so, right? If we start to see some closes under this 50-day moving average, there's a lot of downside room in gold. I don't want to be the first one to call it, but it looks like it started, right? We have, this was Thursday's, 4%, almost 4% sell off in gold. The high of this candle being 2760, we'll call it, the low being 2660. As long as we continue to trade here and we can see, 50% of this candle holding as a resistance, that 50% is just above 2700, right around 2709. Yeah, if the momentum continues in gold, there is a lot of room down, maybe down to 2500. But we will see. We'll need to see some new sellers coming in. If I'm looking at the volume on a daily chart, the sell-off that we had was some of the biggest volume we've had all year in this market, but we've seen what happened before, right? We see high volume, and then the market consolidates and rallies. Again, here, high volume to the downside, which we're usually going to see on sell-off moves, but there's really no follow-through after a while. So is this time different? Maybe. We are starting to consolidate a little bit down here, but maybe starting a bear flag, but just not ready to call the rally over yet. Mohammed says he has a nice video for everyone to put up on his YouTube. So definitely check that out. And Mohammed, the song that Eddie made for you was great. That was a great one. The 2663.9. 2663. Yeah, I can see that. That's right around that 50-day moving average. I think that's possible for sure. Right, but that's it on gold. And let's look at crude oil real quick. Does anyone normally trade around this time? Are you guys normally placing trades, or is this where you are doing some of your prep normally? We got Mustafa here is new. Welcome, Mustafa. Crude oil. Crude oil is kind of just consolidating. Over the past couple of days, we see the same moving averages. I'm looking at a daily chart. The 200 moving average in crude is pretty much a flat line if we zoom out. And we can see we've traded above it, below it, above it, below it over the past year or so. Still presenting some opportunities where the daily ranges are decent enough to trade. I think we're getting about, $2.50 ranges in crude oil, which are decent, but really no trending moves here. Kind of consolidating right now over the last week or so between the $72 and $70 level. Go down to a 30-minute chart, and we're seeing, pretty much the same picture. This 200 moving average, not really acting as a support or a resistance. We're trading on both sides of it. Range bound market. So if you're a range bound trader, identifying the lows of this range, and it's, not a clearly defined range. We do have this gap that we had last week. We're kind of trading in that gap now. The low of the gap being right around that $69 level, and the highs at 71.60. Uh, but this is a pretty range bound market. I have traded crude recently because this range has been providing some, decent opportunities to trade. Shorting up near 72, 72.50. I think we took a trade in the house account last week, right around 72.20. And the idea was, we're in this range and this is near the highs. As long as I have stop placement somewhere, out of the way, I'm okay right now. Speaking a little bit about stop placement, and just some suggestions for stop placement. Uh, Working with Coach Paul, he uses a 2 ATR stop. And what does that mean? The average true range on whatever time frame that you're going to place the trade. So right now, if I'm looking at crude, I'm probably looking at it on a higher time frame chart. I'm not going to go down to a 3-minute chart on crude oil to try to find a trade. The ranges are higher time frame ranges. But if I'm getting in a short at the high of the range, the ATR is 28 ticks. So my stop would be 2 times that, right? Now, if I enter here, 28 times 2 is 56. 56 ticks, maybe I get stopped out here on this move, but it's with good trade location, your stop is out of the way. So I'd be calling the high of the range closer to 72.50. And if we stay in that range, right? If I get short somewhere near 72.50 with a 58 tick stop, my stop's far enough out of the way where I'm probably not going to get hit. And the same thing to the downside. We're kind of in the middle of this range right now. Maybe we're channeling up. You can call it that, right? So 70s are the lows. But if I was to get in a trade here, I would use again a 2 ATR stop, which is about 30 ticks, so a 60 tick stop. To try to stay out of the way for the market. But what I don't want to do is trade a range bound market, trade it with a 10 tick stop, get wicked out before the market goes in my direction. I think Jack was talking about that a little bit on TopstepTV last week, where we were trading a range bound NASDAQ, and widening your stops and kind of decreasing your size helps you stay in the trade for a little longer. Right. Only on Sundays will I trade this hour. Normally wait for Tokyo, Hong Kong, Monday through Friday. Yeah, I'm usually not placing trades around here as well. Um, But if something presents itself, let me know. If you guys see something in the chat that's worth trading, let me know as well. And any questions that you have, send them over. We got Andrew Armad in the chat who always does a great job of sending those over to us. So any questions that you guys have, please let me know. Have you guys been following MP on Twitter by any chance? He posted something on Twitter. He leaked internal conversations. There's been some other leaked internal conversations from a couple different top firms. But all those leaked conversations were good ones. Some new features potentially on Topstep X that are trader centric features, I'll call them. Ideally, helping us all be better traders, specifically for Topstep X. So if you haven't seen MP's Twitter, if you don't follow him, I definitely suggest doing so. Any new features are definitely going to be announced either in an email or on Topstep TV. But MP is just giving a little behind the scenes about what is happening with Topstep, and it's always cool stuff. Uh, We have his Twitter link. Yeah, let me see if I can get MP's Twitter link. Have I ever used Ninja Renko charts? I haven't, Richard Harris. I think I've seen you mention those before, and I said I was gonna check them out. I just haven't had the time to, but I haven't used them. I haven't used them. Let's get MP's Twitter link in the chat here. There it is. He's always posting some kind of stuff on there. I think the first VIP announcement came from MP's Twitter as well. And shameless plug, I'm gonna put mine in there as well if you guys are not following me yet. But let's see. Let's keep scanning. Let's go to Bitcoin. I put this on here last week where we were talking about this in At the Buzzer, and it looking like a market that is potentially going to take off like a rocket, and that's exactly what it's doing right now. And if you're looking for the target, there it is. Um, here's my target on Bitcoin near the moon. I got it around 11,000, 111,000 right now. Um, but the rocket ship is just starting to take off, right? We got a pretty big opening gap, and that's the thing about trading Bitcoin futures. Bitcoin is a 24/7 market, but with the futures, they're closed over the weekends. So we often get these Sunday gaps if Bitcoin does gap up this way. Now, do we fill these gaps all the time? It depends, right? Spot Bitcoin is going to do what it does, and the futures just have to catch up. Sometimes we do fill the gap, and sometimes we don't, right? The Friday close, the gap was the close was right around 77,000, and we're already 4,000 up from there. Uh, do we get a potential retest of 80,000? Maybe, but again, not a market that I'm looking to short for a long time. And if you guys never traded micro Bitcoin before, it's a great market to trade. I'm just going to put on a one lot here just so we can see it. But the tick value, 50 cents a tick in micro Bitcoin, which allows you to limit your risk. Now, this is a market that is just rallying. There are some natural pullbacks in it, but very strong market. Trades a lot like an equity market right now, right? We've seen this looks like the S&P, the NASDAQ chart, with the difference being, this massive gap that we have here. This is, a 5% gap, which we can't do much about, right? We're trading futures. But a great contract to trade, allows you to limit your risk, and trends really well. So you still cannot bank the combine resets yet, maybe soon. That is coming soon. That is coming soon, I believe. I know the tech team is working on a bunch of new features going into 2025. Banked resets is on that list. I can't say when it's going to happen. I can say it is being worked on. I do know that. Yeah, Richard Harris says I have a good memory. I have a a weird memory. I'll remember some things and sometimes not the important stuff, but I do remember you asking about those Ninja Renko charts. Let's see. We're not done with the first half an hour yet in any of these markets, but if you guys do have any questions, let me know. We do have some earnings coming out later this week as well. We have Home Depot, probably the important ones: Home Depot, Cisco, Disney. From what I've seen, all markets, all stocks that are in the Dow. So the Dow could be pretty interesting this week as well. I don't know how many Dow traders we have here, but the Dow is also a market making new all-time highs. 44,300 is the high in the Dow, um, and arguably the strongest out of all of the equity markets right now. Look at last week's rally in the Dow, the Russell as well. I don't know if you guys saw the Russell on election day. The Russell was up about 6% at one point. So I know we have a lot of traders that trade the NASDAQ in the ES. I get it. More popular markets, we hear about them more often, especially if you're trading the NASDAQ. It's the faster pace of the market. But if the Nasdaq is consolidating for a day potentially, looking at the Dow, looking at the Russell can present some opportunities as well. I'm going to close that Bitcoin trade because I don't want to be in it. And Nvidia is in the Dow now as well, which we see how much of an effect the how much of an effect Nvidia has on the Nasdaq. Does anyone know the weighting of Nvidia in the Dow? I know there's like this weird weighting system that the Dow uses. Does anyone know what it is? We got a RTY trader here as well. And the Russell, look at the Russell, just taking off. Russell making yearly highs, not all-time highs, but making yearly highs. All-time high, I believe, is 25. Yeah, this 2502 back in 2021, but not far off. Not far off, right? If you're looking to play the catch-up trade, right, where one of these equity markets might catch up to the others, the Russell probably has the best opportunity to catch up here. What does banked resets mean? So if you don't use your reset, so uh, you know everyone is paying a monthly fee for your combine. If you don't use the reset, then you get to save it, right? Currently, the way it works is, let's say I'm trading a combine for 4 months. If I don't fail the combine, but it takes me 4 months, each one of those resets isn't being used. So right now, you're kind of just losing a reset. But the way it's going to work is, if you don't use it, you get to bank it. And from what I've heard from MP is, as long as you don't use them, let's say I go 4 months without using a reset, but I'm still paying that activation or that monthly fee, uh, those resets are going to be saved, right? So if I go 4 months, I have four banked resets, and then I can use them on any account, right? So it doesn't matter which account it would be. I can use them on any of the accounts if I don't use them. Coach Hoop says 5.5% for Nvidia in the Dow. That's a decent percentage, right? Dow 30, right? So 5.5% for one company is a lot. And John says it's price rated. Coach Hoop just put a Dow chart in there. Thank you, Coach Hoop. I'm seeing Nvidia as the 22nd heaviest weighted, so somewhere towards the bottom. Um, what maybe the most volatile market, volatile stock in the Dow right now. Mustafa, I saw a post on Facebook about VIP community. What's that? So Topstep VIP. Let me get my notes on VIP real quick. Give me 1 second. So if you haven't heard, Topstep VIP is something that we started a couple months ago. It is providing traders an opportunity to work more closely with a coach. We're growing the VIP program. Right now, there are 5 teams. Myself, Coach Ray, Coach Vince, Coach Hoop, and Coach Paul have the VIP teams. Dakota is going to be the newest VIP coach come January. And there are forms that are being dropped during the daytime segment. I think they've done 5 forms already, and they said they're going to do 25 forms between now and the end of the year. And the more times you fill out that form, the more opportunities you get for the drawing for VIPs. And you get access to a Topstep combine for 3 months, 2 free resets a month, and no activation fee, and private coaching in Discord with one of the coaches. Now, I've been doing the VIPs for about 5 months now with my group, and I've done a couple of live trading sessions where exactly how we trade the house account on Topstep TV. I've had the traders kind of walk me through what they would place as a trade, and doing that in the interest of conciseness with your trade idea, right? If you have someone else clicking the button for you, you got to be pretty concise about what you want, right? Where's my stop? Where's my entry? Where's my exit? So we're just doing things like that. Eventually, I think this is the precursor to the Top Step Trading League. But I think it's a great opportunity. We're going to have 5 more coaches. I think they're going to 10 teams total. So we'll have 5 more coaches starting next year. So you'll continue to hear about opportunities to join that. It's 50 traders on a team. So if we're bringing in 5 new teams, that's 250 traders with the opportunity, which I think is pretty cool. When you are looking at the 30-minute opening range, are you including the big spikes wicks or just the actual body of the candle? I include the wicks. I include the wicks. I know sometimes people are just looking at the body, but for myself, I include the wicks. Price did trade there at some point. May not be the most volume, but I do include them. You got 5 minutes until that first 30-minute closes. And we will see what happens. If you guys have any questions for me, let me know. Kind of just scanning around to see if anything is moving. Oh, and if you guys haven't seen how I trade, or I kind of scan every market to see if it's presenting an opportunity. So I'm gonna pull up my quote board on the side here. And basically, what I'm looking for is a big percentage move. Really don't care what market it is. I'm a very technical trader, so I look for the same technical pattern across a bunch of different markets. And if it's presenting a pattern, I'll go ahead and trade it. Best trade that I had last week was a copper short. Don't know how many traders trade copper, but I see copper in this kind of range bound market. We can see chopping around a lot, and I saw the ATR start to increase in copper. Right, the ranges start to increase over the past couple of days. Um, it's still very much in the range. So when we got towards the high of the range, just looking for a short back into the range. So I will scan around and look for a bunch of different opportunities. I see H2X says check copper, and here we are. So the copper trade I took last week, and I'm waiting for it to kind of set up here. Uh, Need that first 30 minutes to develop. And basically, what I do for every one of these markets, and as soon as we hit, uh, the bottom of the hour, I'll go through all these markets and set this exact same thing up. But here's the first 30 minutes, right? The 30 minutes that we're in right now, that's the Globex Open. And I'm attaching a VWAP to that and looking for something that looks like this, right? What I'm calling this, what Coach Paul and I call this, is urgency, right? We have the first 30 minutes established, and that VWAP is leaving that range pretty early, right? There's clear selling in this, volume is leaving to the downside, and we can see how much of a resistance that VWAP is on the way down. So I'm looking for something like this in whatever market decides to present it to me. Now, if it happens to be Australian dollar and I pull up the Australian dollar chart, I may trade it. It's the same technical pattern. It applies anywhere. And then it's up to me to establish the risk, how much risk I'm willing to put behind that position. Um, what range for HG are you referring to? Pull up a 30-minute chart, and it's the first 30-minute candle. So this one that's printing right now, we got about 3 minutes left before this candle closes, and I'm looking at this range. Am I still looking for shorts on copper this week? So my plan for copper was trade the range. Right? Trade the range. And the range did get extended, right? We have some bigger daily candles here. But if I'm looking to trade the range, I may be leaning long to the long side here. Right now, I'm going to trade whatever the market tells me. But the way I'm looking at this is how much room is there to the low of the range? We got about a 2% move potentially down to these daily lows here. Um, but I'm going to trade what the market tells me. We already had the short that was Friday, so I may be looking to take longs in this market. And guys, the way I'm marking out this 30-minute candle, you guys are seeing me put this box up here. It's just a fib tool. So on the 3 down on the drawing tools on the left side, you have fib retracement. I'm using the hotkey Alt F to place it, but the settings for my fib retracement are 0, 0.5, and 1. Right. Sometimes there are these intermediate levels, 618 with your fibs. I don't use those personally. I just want to know the high, the low, and the midpoint of the candle that I'm marking out, and then I just go to the candle, high and low, and put the fibs around it. All right. This half hour is going to close in about 20 seconds or so, and then I'll kind of scan and go through. If I'm looking at my quote board on the side, I'm seeing nat gas. Now, guys, this is the way I trade. So I'm kind of taking you through my process. Depending on where you are in your trading journey, I don't suggest doing this, right? If you're new to trading and you're trying to find out, what your style is, what your technical style is, I don't suggest bouncing around to a bunch of different markets, because it's almost like you're chasing money at that point, right? For me, I've defined a setup that I'm looking for, and I'm going to take it in whatever market it presents itself. But I think doing that can cause a little bit of confusion because there's a lot of variables, right? There's different tick values for every market that you trade. Each of these markets have different personalities. I've traded a decent amount of these. So I wouldn't suggest bouncing around. I'm just kind of taking you guys through what my process is. right? So we got that half hour to close. I'm gonna go back to the NASDAQ, and we'll just mark out the high and low of that first 30 minutes. And we have VWAP there as well. So now what I'm looking at is as long as this VWAP stays a flat line, then we'll trade it like a range bound market. If it breaks out of that range, like we saw that urgency in copper last Friday, then I'll trade it in that direction. Richard Harris says trends are my enemy. I feel the exact opposite. I think ranges are my enemy. And if I back test my trades or not even back test, if I look at my executions for a long time, if we were in a range bound market, most of my executions were right in the middle of the range. Now I've gotten better at that, using some tools to identify whether or not we're in a range. But I love trading trending markets, range bound markets, and we have them more often. Um, you know, are not my best trading. Is there somewhere we can see where volatility and volume increase for all the futures pairs available to trade? You can check the CME site. Um, you can check the CME site. The way I do it, the easiest way for me is, and if you haven't joined me and Coach Paul for At the Buzzer, highly suggest doing so. Shameless plug, but we do it every day at 3:15 Central Time, right after the daytime show ends. But the way I realize that markets are increasing in volatility is by looking at this quote board. We do something at the beginning of every segment, and we say, what were the top percentage movers on the day, and when you see something consistently in the top three percentage movers, there's something going on in that market, right? Copper, for example, was one of those. We did at the buzzer for a week, and copper was either to the upside or the downside, one of the biggest percentage movers for 4 days in a row. Now, going into that fifth day, and if you guys were on At the Buzzer, you heard me say it, this is on my scouting report because it's consistently in the top percentage movers. Now, I could look at the NASDAQ every day. I could default to it, yes, and it does present some opportunities. But copper is doing something right now that is presenting an opportunity every day. And I'm gonna look, right? Does it mean I'm gonna trade it? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm at least going to look to see if it presents an opportunity. And like I said, that was my best trade of the week last week. Do you enter on a 30-minute candle or drop down to a 3-minute? During this time, I'm kind of going to stay on the 30-minute. If I'm looking for a trade, what I'm looking for right now is this VWAP to start to leave the range in any direction. And I'm looking for a candle close outside of this range. Now, could I take it on the initial break? Let's say we broke to the upside already. Could I take the trade on the initial break? I could, but to me, that's preempting a little bit, especially if this VWAP stays here. Now, what to me I'm calling a signal is a close outside of this range on a 30-minute chart, and then a test and rejection of this range, right? So if we get a close outside, if it happens at 31, 360, if the close happens up here, I'm not going to buy it up here. I'm going to potentially wait for a retest of the high of the range, price to reject it, and then take the long from here. Um, Worst case scenario, if I take a long from here at 320 and we closed at 360, I have a 40-point trade back up to 360. If the market then wants to continue to rally and trade above 360, now I'm in a better position than whoever bought here at 21,360. So I'm not taking a trade yet. Again, if this 30-minute range continues to print and we test the highs of this range, but VWAP stays in the middle, I may take a short, right? Do I think the market's going to sell off? No, but it may present an opportunity for a quick scalp, 15, 20-point trade. It seems like there's a big difference for the 30-minute range between NASDAQ and MNQ. I mean, they are different markets. They are different markets. They should be pretty close, but they are different markets. So there might be a little bit of a variation. So 21,242, 21,307 in MNQ. And yeah, there's a little bit of a difference, but they are different markets. So just keep that in mind. Um, I would suggest, just we're not investing in these markets, right? We're day trading them. So I would say just trade the market, trade the chart for the market that you're trading. Lido says, "Am I blocked?" You are now. No, I can see your messages, Lito. uh, and I take a look at Swiss franc futures. Sure. Not a market that I've traded often, but I'm gonna do the same thing. 30-minute chart, we're under the 200 moving average. Market's been in a downtrend over the last month or so. Looks like it's still downtrending. I wouldn't be surprised at a retest, maybe rejection at this 20 moving average, if not the 50. But I would do the same thing, right? First 30 minutes, we have it here. Attach VWAP to it, and it's a flat line right now. Now, this market is in a downtrend, so if it does come up and test kind of this 115 area, I'd be looking to potentially take a short. Uh, but yeah, it looks like a market that on a higher time frame, if you're trading this, is in a downtrend. Let's look at it daily. It could be breaking, right? We're under the 200 moving average on the daily. Could be breaking. What about platinum? Platinum is an interesting one. If we look at the daily chart on platinum, it's a 200 moving average is kind of starting to, tilt to the upside, but it is still pretty flat and a range bound market for now. Um, I do like to trade platinum. The tick value in platinum, presents some good opportunities to limit risk. Uh, but this is it's a difficult one because it either moves or it doesn't. And let's see what we have here. Uh, See, we're kind of rejecting at the high. Still need some data to come in, right? Still pretty early, low volume time. I wouldn't be surprised here. Uh, you see, we're kind of we closed above this 20 moving average. I wouldn't be surprised at a test of the 50 moving average on the 30-minute chart, which is up at 990. And Sean says, I disagree. Always watch the NQ, even with trading MNQ. So here's what I'll say to that, Sean. If you're looking at the charts, I would say look at the market that you trade. If you're looking at the depth of market where you're looking for volume, use the bigger market for sure. Because the charts are going to give you different prices, and some traders don't use the DOM at all. Um, so it doesn't really matter. But I would look at if I'm looking at the depth of market for volume, I'm going to use the bigger market for sure. Uh, Can you tell us how to get the VWAP on the charts? That's for Dion. So there's two ways. You could use the VWAP indicator, which is just going to put it on the chart for you. Right now, you can see that this is we'll make it yellow. Yellow line that I have here is going to give you the session. Damn it, I already have a yellow line. Let me make it orange. Orange line that I have here is going to give you the session VWAP, right? So session starts at 6 p.m. Eastern time, right where we just started, where the market's open. It's going to attach a VWAP from there. The way I use VWAP is I use an anchor, and the anchor is in the drawing tools. Again, on the left side, you have 5 icons down, forecasting and measurement tools. Halfway down that menu, you have anchored VWAP. The reason I anchor is because I'll place multiple VWAPs throughout the day. The first one is always going to line up with the session VWAP because I'm anchoring it to the first candle. But as the day goes on, I may anchor in different places, right? If the market makes a swing high, I may anchor there. If we have a ton of volume coming in, I might anchor there. So for me, instead of just using the default one, because I know I'm going to end up placing, sometimes 4 of these throughout the day, I just put them on manually. Do you always plot the first 30-minute like that, or do you use the 3 or 5 minute? So the first 30 minutes I'm going to use for Globex open, right? So the time that we just opened here, I'm going to use 30 minutes. Why am I using 30 minutes here? Because it's a slower time. There's going to be less volume. Um, so I want more information. Now, for the New York session, when it opens, I go down to a 3-minute opening range. And I'm doing that just because it's a higher volatile time, right? More volume, moves can happen a little bit quicker. Um, but it's all a preference. It's all a preference thing. I go 3 and 30. I know Coach Paul, he just says, why am I switching? I just use the 30 for all of them. It's a preference. whatever you do, keep it consistent. And for me, I'm not going to go from like a 1 to a 5 to a 15 to a 3. I have the 30 and the 3, and those are the two that I'll stick with. Check nat gas, it might be an opportunity. Let's see. It's interesting. Nat gas likes to have these Sunday gaps as well. You see this huge gap here, right? Right now, it's showing that it's up 5%, but most of that, 3.5% of that is the gap. We may fill it potentially because we can see over the last couple of days, right? This has been in a range, and we just opened up near the highs of the range here. Is there a potential for maybe this move just continues, right? But if I'm looking at the moving averages, they are all kind of wrapped around each other. Uh, so is this a potential to fade back into that gap, or does this move continue? Supposed to go. Trying to decide if I want to short this right now. I think I'm going to short this. Let me see. 20-day moving average. Do I want to short this? Sorry, guys. I just froze for a second. I'm trying to do some math. I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to trade this market right here and where my stop would go. Give me 1 second. Sean, thanks for bringing this up. Careful, it's not called a Widowmaker for nothing. So I talked to Coach Paul a lot about that, and he said the Widowmaker name came from when Nat Gas was trading like $10. Right now, the price of Nat Gas is $2.80. So the ranges are a lot smaller, uh, and I think you could call it. Let's say I was swing trading Nat Gas and I was short. This is a Widowmaker type of move because if I was short going into the weekend, now my position is 5% against me. Before a day trade, I think it's reasonable. It's reasonable to trade. Let's see. Where is this 20-day moving average? 2840. This is a 50K. Okay, I'm gonna take this short. I'm taking it in micro net gas. And again, guys, anything we do or say is for educational purposes only, not a suggestion to take a trade. And this is in a 50K combine that I'm using to help Topstep try out some new features. Some of the features that we did talk about a little bit earlier on the call. So it is a combine that I want to pass, right? Because some of the features that we need to test, I do need to pass this. So this is not just a kind of BS trade that I'm putting on here, but it is a 50K account, so I'm going to manage my risk there as well. Taking a 3 lot short in micro nat gas. My stop is going to be above 2.9, and I'm looking for the lows of this move here. And I'm just going to leave this on. Can you explain how you are using volume as a confluence with anchored VWAP? Yeah. I am basically, if I'm using anchor VWAP and volume, let's go back to the NASDAQ. Looks like it's breaking out here. Suck it. So it's a big difference there. Micro NASDAQ is leaving this range, and I'm looking at that right. The NASDAQ is not. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Right. But different ranges, right? And that's why we were saying, sometimes trade the chart. If you're looking at volume, trade the market that you're trading. Uh, but how am I using volume as a confluence? If I'm using Anchor VWAP, I'm looking at uh, I'm looking at the volume to see whether or not the market participants who are in this VWAP are supportive, right? So anytime we get a test of it, I'm looking at either time in sales or the volume indicator that comes in to see when we get a retest what market participants are thinking, right? Are we starting to see selling, seeing orders hitting the bid, or not? What I'm normally going to do is, as the session goes on, I'm looking for any kind of anomaly in volume, right? So I'm usually looking outside of the first hour, and then anchoring a view up to there, to see how the market responds since the time that high volume was printed, right? So if we see this volume here, this was at 10:54 Central Time on Friday in the Nasdaq. I'm going to look at that and anchor a view up there and see how the market responds, right? It was a pretty, if you remember Friday, it was a pretty consolidated day for the most part. This view up is a flat line. Uh, if I look at another day where we had some trends, it'll look a little bit different, right? So I have this volume anomaly right here, right? I'm calling this an anomaly because it was outside of the first hour of trade, and a pretty big volume relative to anything else around it. So I'm going to anchor a view up there. I'm going to look at the candle range and volume. What is it telling me? This volume is a flat line. This VWAP is a flat line, so it's a range bound market. I'm shorting at the highs, buying at the lows. If it's a trending VWAP, I'm trying to get an entry as close as possible to VWAP. We see this high volume here. This was the market open. VWAP left that range. That's telling me buyers are pushing this market up. Now, do I know what the intentions of those buyers are? I don't, right? Are they buying to close a position? Are they buying to open? It really doesn't matter. They're buying it. So this VWAP leaving the range tells me, especially with the trend, that I should be buying, trying to buy as close as possible to it. Or if I'm short, that's an area where I'm thinking I have to get out of my trade because the overall flow of the market is to the upside. But now we see how the flow slows down here, right? Anytime I see a flat VWAP, this is telling me range bound market. I told you guys I'm not the best range bound trader. This is how I've helped myself be a better range bound trader. We have this high volume where something happened here in the market, right? Somebody traded a lot of volume here. And from that point, there's really no direction. So could I be buying and hoping for a breakout? I could, but does that mean it's going to happen? It's not. Now we can see that VWAP start to kind of tilt up towards the high of that range and eventually leave. And then we do get a breakout, but taking I think in this case, taking a long here at the high of this range is a low probability trade because there hasn't been any volume to show us that it's going to push. Now, if I take the long at the lows of the range, worst case scenario, I can make my money and get out at the highs. That's a decent trade here, right? If I buy at these lows with a 2 ATR stop like we talked about, if I'm buying at the low of this range, 2 ATR stop is 30 points. I'm on a 3-minute chart right now. My stop would be down here. Worst case scenario, I make money to the high of the range, which is in this case, is that right? Is it doing that? 25 points. I'll take that. And then if the market wants to break out, it breaks out. Did someone teach you about how to drop the VWAP like that? Uh, I don't remember where I got it. Oh, so I do remember. What am I talking about? Uh, Brian Shannon's book on anchored VWAP. It's behind my green screen right now, so I can't grab it. But Brian Shannon, who's the master of anchored VWAP, I read his book. It kind of aligned with some of the volume analysis stuff that I do, but I love it. Your setups are very clear. Yeah, I think it's find volume, see how the market responds to it, and that can be it from there. What time frame do you execute on? Usually on a 30-minute chart. Usually on a 30. Oh, sorry, not a 30-minute, 3-minute chart. 3-minute chart. Um, let's see. Coach Hoop is calling out some orders in the S&P. Oh no, that wasn't Coach Hoop. 2100 lots at 39 in the ES to the sell side. Is it sitting? So I don't have level 2 data on here, so I can't see what's sitting out there. Is this nat gas? This is a ES chart that I have up here right now. But the trade I'm in is in nat gas, micro nat gas. Do you have any key levels that you look at? I look for volume. Um, I look for something that sticks out in volume, and that might sound kind of obscure, but really what I'm looking at on a shorter time frame is was there, and I'll try to find an example uh, of some type of volume anomaly. So give me 1 second. Oops. My levels are going to come from something like this. So this right here, this high volume. This is the London session last going into last Friday, right? This volume is a larger volume candle than anything else that we see. So this is going to be a level for me, right? Why is this a level? Because someone decided to trade a bunch of volume around here. I don't know why they did it, but that's going to be a level for me. Now, you'll see other people use volume profile to find the same levels. I was just taught to do it this way. So this is, still the way that I do it. Could I use volume profile and make it a little easier? Maybe. So now how does this, using this as a level help me trade? VWAP at some point leaves this range to the upside, right? So I could take this as a long. Most important thing I have to do is limit my risk, right? So if I'm taking this long, I can't say, yeah, this market is going to rally 30 points if this volume never catches up. But you see how this starts to flatten out? We start to make a high of the range, right? This is now telling me what like I need to pay attention to what happens in this price range here. All right, so all of my levels are going to come off of some type of volume analysis, and then we can see, right, when we test back into this range, I'm looking at, does the market accept these prices? Does it trade through it? We start to use that high volume as a support and then go from there. All right, but good question so far. Again, not too many trades that I'm going to place during this time. I normally don't trade here. That nat gas trade, I do like, and I'm not risking a whole lot. How do you deal with bias? When my bias is strong, I discard my setups. Uh, Knowing that your bias doesn't really affect the markets, it's hard to. And I think it's why it's important to really limit risk and manage your risk, because you can have a bias. And if that bias aligns with what the market is saying, then you have a great day. If you have that bias and go with the mindset that my bias is right and the market is wrong, that's how you get in trouble if you're not limiting your risk. Now, for me, the way I measure my, and sometimes I do still trade with a bias, right? I might come into, if I ever realize that I'm coming into the market and saying, hey, I want to sell this or I want to buy this, I think I'm wrong, right? I think that's the wrong mindset, because regardless of what I want to do, the market's going to do what it is going to do, right? So for me, the way I try not to have a bias is by looking at VWAP. What is the market saying? And then my job is just to get in the flow with what the market is saying. If I'm coming in and I'm saying, oh, the S&Ps are too high, it shouldn't be up here, the markets aren't doing great, people are out of jobs, blah blah blah, I'm going to short this. Market does not give a shit about any of that. Right? Not my opinion. My opinion could be wrong. So the way I've tried to define it, especially for a day trade, is identify something that can point out a trend and try to get in line with the trend. Now, do I take counter trend trades? 100%. Especially if I have a bias, but you need to be aware of how, if you're counter trend, you need to be aware of how much the market is presenting to counter trend traders, right? What does that mean? On a 30-minute chart here on the S&Ps, this is clearly an uptrend. Somebody might want to be a contrarian and short this. How much opportunity on a 30-minute chart in the last week did they get? Here's a 24-point sell-off in the S&Ps. Here's another 20 40-point sell off. Now, if my bias says this market is too high and it should sell off 500 points, if I don't take that 40, if I don't take that 20, then I'm in a bad place. Right. And if you look at this chart, there aren't many opportunities. So you can make money on both sides of the market. I think there was a time a couple months ago where, yeah, it was July into early August when the markets were just selling off and Dakota said all he did was buy it. That's a bias. And he made money that week with good trade location and managing your risk, right? He could say, "Oh, these markets shouldn't sell off. They should just, they should rally 2,000 points." If they're going to sell off, you got to find where your trades fit in that. Um, but it's hard for me. I try not to have one, but we're all human, right? We're gonna have opinions. We trade these markets every day, so you're gonna have an opinion about what it's going to do. Just know that your opinion does not control anything. Um, all right, we got about 5 minutes left. This went pretty quick. This went pretty quick. We got about 5 minutes left. If you guys have any other questions, let me know. Remember, Dakota is doing slow markets tonight at 7:30 Central. So make sure you join him. And Deeyana is doing the London Open at 3:30 Central. What, did we not check Crude? Uh, we did check Crude. Crude's kind of in this range. If we look at this, 30-minute candle, it's still in the range, not really doing too much yet. Volatility in Crude, we've seen picking up into the London session. So for right now, I'm not expecting too much out of Crude. But on a higher time frame, if we zoom out, prepping for the week, I'm looking for this $69 to $70 level to potentially hold. And again, if we're looking at a daily chart, we're in this consolidation on the daily. So right now, we're kind of right in the middle of the range. Does that mean that there aren't trades available? There are, but I think there are cleaner markets right now. Yep, and futures markets are not closed on Veterans Day. Thanks again to all of our veterans um, for your service. But futures markets are not closed. Just the bond markets are closed tomorrow. So we will be able to trade. But if you're trading, any of the treasury products, you might be the only one out there. Is there a price limit that can be triggered on nat gas that is above 5%? I don't think so, actually. Special trades, I don't think so. I think the highest percentage move, and I could be wrong, but I think the highest percentage move that I've seen in nat gas over the last year was like 9.5%, and the markets were still open. So I don't believe so. Am I still in my nat gas trade? I am. Yeah. This is one that, unless I see something that I don't like, as the day goes on, I'm gonna stay in this for now. I like where my risk is. It's managed. Maybe I get stopped out of this. Maybe I don't. I'm, a little bit less than a 1-to-1 right now. I could put this at the gap close, but I'm gonna put my exit right around. Okay, that makes it a 1-to-1. Put my exit right around these moving averages. The reason I had it here is because that's the open and that 200 moving average on the 30-minute. Right. But good questions. We got about 30 seconds left. If you guys have any last minute questions, let me know. Want to thank everyone for joining today. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button. Remember, Nick is going to be out for just a little bit, welcoming his new baby into the world. So, again, Nick, prayers for a happy and healthy delivery for baby and mom. But I'm going to be with you guys for the next couple of Sundays. Copper starting to leave this range. Yeah, so copper's starting to leave. Um, the one thing I want to see is that VWAP catch up to it, and we're closing this 30-minute candle in the next 7 seconds. So I want to see this candle close outside, which it looks like it's going to do. Then ideally, I would have loved to see this VWAP leaving this range as well, but it's not. So where I'm thinking about trade location, if I'm going to take this long, is now at 50% of the range because volume hasn't left. But yeah, it looks like, see, we just got to close outside. It looks like it wants to go. If I look at the NASDAQ, still in this range, not really doing too much. Let's see what happens here. And yeah, that's it. But Last week's cut looking crispy. Yeah, I gotta keep it up. I lost my Topstep hat, so I'm gonna be on camera without a hat. So my barber's gonna be seeing a lot more of me. But thank you everyone for joining. Gonna go ahead and end it there. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Remember, Dakota is going to be on for slow markets. So I will see you all in the chat then. Wow. Okay, so look at this. Saw someone just mention the Nikkei. Look at the urgency in the Nikkei. This is the last thing I'll show because we haven't had many urgent examples. We got to close outside the range, 30-minute range, and this VWAP is tilting towards the upside. My entry here would be the highs of this range, right? VWAP hasn't left the range yet, so I wouldn't be surprised at a retest of the high of the range and continue. My stop would be somewhere below this candle right here. But this is starting to look urgent in the Nikkei, right? Where buyers are stepping in here. I'm going to cancel this because I'm not going to trade the Nikkei on a 50K account. But that is it. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Enjoy the rest of your night. Trade well this week. Make sure you manage your risk, and we will talk to you all soon. Bye.